Hey guys, welcome to Budget RC. Today I'll be reviewing this JJRC Q46 that Banggood was kind enough to send to me. So let's start taking a look at the vehicle. Right here is the box that the vehicle comes with. It's your standard fare box. It's got some color pictures of the vehicle, description of the controller, and some other neat stuff. Not something I'm going to spend a lot of time on. In addition to the box, it comes with a little toolkit which consists of a little tiny Phillips screwdriver and a plastic hex wrench. It comes with your battery charger with the US adapter. It comes with this little game advertisement that's of no use. And it comes with the owner's manual. This is a pretty basic owner's manual, but there's not really a whole lot to the car that you need to know about. It would have been nice if it had an exploded parts diagram and some of the part numbers for the commonly used parts, but most of that stuff is available online anyway. The controller it comes with is a pretty basic controller. It uses 4 AA batteries. It's got a foam grip on the steering wheel. It's got your on-off switch, your bind button, and some steering and throttle trim. The labeling on here is not correct. They label it as steering trim and steering dual rate. There's just a trim for the steering on this side, and the other side is your throttle trim. Overall, this remote is very basic. It's pretty lightweight other than the batteries themselves, but it actually feels really comfortable. It's got a nice feel. It feels a lot like the Traxxas radios. I like it. You can kind of work it one-handed, not quite, at least if you have short thumbs like me, but it's a nice, comfortable radio. Not much more to say about it. So this is the vehicle itself. The vehicle is a 12th scale vehicle, and it's got an independent front suspension with a solid rear axle. This has become a pretty popular chassis type recently. A lot of vehicles now are based on the Twin Hammers vehicles which use this design. In addition to the Twin Hammers, you have the WL Toys 10428 series, which uses the exact same chassis as the Twin Hammers. And then WL Toys came out with the 12428, and the 12 stands for 12th scale. It's basically a smaller version of that Twin Hammers based design. There's also the Feiyu FY03, FY06, FY07 series, which are very similar to the 12428, but a little bit different. JJRC has their own Q39, which is based on that same Feiyu chassis. Interestingly enough, this vehicle is not based on that same chassis. This vehicle is based on the WL Toys 12428. And if you look underneath here, those of you who are familiar with that vehicle will see that this thing looks exactly the same. You've got your metal reinforcement plate here, you've got these cutouts, you've got the indentation for your spur gear, and if you look at all of the components, you can see that this is the exact same chassis as that WL Toys vehicle. Now that's kind of a good thing because that vehicle is immensely popular and has a lot of support, so there's a lot of parts out here available. That said, this vehicle does have some of its own unique designs. Obviously the body is the thing that stands out the most. This is a hard body, not a Lexan body. It's a nice looking body with red metallic paint, plus it's got LEDs in the headlights and up here. It's got these nice plastic details, and it's got a fully detailed interior, which looks, I think, pretty nice. Now, because this has its own unique body, the suspension is set up a little bit differently in the rear compared to the 12428. Now, the 12428 has shocks that come right from these rear trailing arms up to a shock post that would sit about right here. Obviously, this vehicle does not have that because of the detailed interior. This vehicle moves the shocks all the way to the axles, and on the top it connects to the plastic frame that the hard body is mounted to. Now, that does reduce your rear travel a bit compared to the other style, but on a vehicle of this type, I'm not sure how much that matters anyway. Additionally, this comes with the rear spare in the back, and if you pull out these 2 pins, you can see the battery tray. So this battery that we're looking at is labeled as a 3000 milliamp hour battery. That's not really true. This battery pack actually consists of a pair of 18650 sized lithium ion cells. These are the same types of batteries that you find in certain flashlights and in a lot of those vaping things. These batteries are really popular. These are also the same type of battery cells that you find in laptop batteries, for example. They're a very common size, they're a very common battery. However, they are not available in a 3000 milliamp capacity. The highest capacity that I've seen 18650 batteries available in is about a 2300 milliamp hour battery, and those are very expensive and not something you would find in an inexpensive vehicle like this. I ran this down until it was empty, charged it up, and it took somewhere between 1100 and 1200 milliamps. Now, once I cycle it through a couple times, that may come up a little bit higher, but regardless, this is definitely not a 3000 milliamp battery pack. So moving on, the tires themselves are pretty soft compound. They're not as soft as something you would find on a crawler, but for a basher or a general purpose type of vehicle, they're pretty soft. They have an aggressive tread, and they feel like they've got a pretty decent foam in them. They're relatively firm, but they're not too hard. You can see on the outside it's about a 1.9 inch diameter, and on the inside it's a little bit wider. It's almost like a scaled down short course wheel. The vehicle itself uses standard 12 millimeter hex, so you can change out the wheels and tires to something else. Now in the front, you can't really see it on camera, but this uses the same lay down shock design as what the Twin Hammers and all of these other Twin Hammers inspired vehicles use. All four shocks are a friction shock, there's no oil, and they're very stiffly sprung. So you can see that the vehicle has a lot of bounce, and it's not well damped. At this price point, you're not likely to find too many vehicles that come with a pretty nice shock package, but you could always upgrade those shocks later. Now in terms of the electronics, I haven't taken the cover off yet, but these electronics are pretty similar to what you find on the 124-28. It has an all-in-one ESC receiver servo controller. It uses a 5-wire servo. And what's neat about this vehicle is that even though it's only a 1/12 scale vehicle, it uses a full-sized 540 motor. Now that's nice because it's going to give you a lot of power, and you've got a lot more motor options available if you decided to upgrade later. One of the drawbacks to this vehicle is that the gears in both the front differential and the rear differential are plastic, and that's kind of a curious choice considering how big of a motor that they provide. Fortunately, these 18650 battery packs don't tend to deliver high current bursts like some of your LiPo packs can, and I think that would really help prevent any sort of gear problems unless you really got this bound up. So one more thing I wanted to do is to give you guys a quick size comparison so that you can kind of get a feel for what the difference between this 1/12 scale vehicle is with things that you might be more familiar with, like the Twin Hammers clone that I have here or my Bomber. So let's go through one at a time and take a look. So here you can see the difference between the 104-28 WL Toys vehicle and this new JJRC. This is a 1/10 scale, and again, this is the one based on the Twin Hammers chassis, and this is the miniaturized version of that. And you can see here that this is a good deal smaller than the larger vehicle. The architecture underneath is pretty much the same, just in miniature. We've got the same trailing arm rear axle design with the solid rear axle and the independent front suspension design. Basically just a miniaturized version of the same thing. So now if we park this next to my Bomber, you can really see that this vehicle is a lot smaller. Now this Bomber is technically called a 1/10 scale vehicle, but I think in reality with a 14 some odd inch wheelbase, it's really closer in proportion to your typical 1/8 scale vehicle, and it really dwarfs this smaller 12 scale vehicle. Now the Bomber, of course, is a full solid axle front and rear, where this has got the independent front suspension. But overall, they've got a pretty similar look. It's just that this is just quite a bit smaller. Obviously, this will have a big impact on the type of terrain that this vehicle will be able to cover. So anyway, let's get on with the review. So I went ahead and plugged in the battery, and I wanted to show you guys that these are real LEDs, and the LED headlights combined with the hard body I think really gives a nice look, and the light bar on the top as well. So now what I want to do is go ahead and take the body off and see what's underneath. Alright, so taking this thing apart is pretty easy. Everything is held on with Phillips screws, so you can use the supplied Phillips screwdriver or a better one if you've got one hanging around. You pop these side panels off right here, and then there's a screw that's holding the top of the rear shock on. You back that screw out until the rear shock comes off, and then underneath you've got 4 more Phillips screws. Then the body comes off, and you just need to unplug the wires going to the LEDs. Once you do that, you've got full access to the chassis. Now that you're in here, you can see that this is a 124/28. The only thing missing are the rear shock towers that would normally bolt right here. You can see that giant 540 motor that I was talking about. You can see the lay-down shock design, and you can see your integrated receiver, speed control, and servo controller. The servo is right here, and it's not a standard size servo, it's a little bit smaller. So if you do want to upgrade your electronics, you'll have to find a smaller servo that can fit in there. Now, another thing I wanted to mention is that there's quite a bit of metal throughout this vehicle. You can see that there's an anodized aluminum motor plate, which is neat. The shock caps, even though these are friction shocks, are aluminum. And the hinge pin retainers for the front A-arms are also metal. So that should really help make sure that that's nice and durable. I found that on a lot of these vehicles, these hinge pin retainers are the weak point. So by having these be metal, I think is a real plus. Now, one other thing that's pretty interesting that I wanted to point out is this giant stack of shims right here. And my guess is that this is here to counterbalance this heavy 540 motor on this side. And the vehicle is pretty well balanced left to right based on my lifting it up in the center. Weight balance, weight distribution, it's maybe a little bit forward heavy, but it feels pretty even as well. The servo does have a small servo saver right on the servo arm. So that was the overview of the truck. Now I want to show you a little bit of running footage. And in this footage, I've got a little bit of footage of me driving. I've also got some footage of my 6-year-old daughter and my 9-year-old son driving. I thought that would give kind of a nice perspective to show you what this vehicle could be like for a kid to use. After the running footage, I'm going to introduce a new segment called Henry's Corner. And in this segment, my 9-year-old son is going to give you a little bit of a summary of what he thought about the vehicle. That way you can get the perspective from a 9-year-old. That's a great option if you might be looking at this vehicle for a child. So we're going to go through that, and then at the end, I'll go through and give you my final thoughts on the vehicle.
Hi, and welcome to Henry's Corner. Today we're going to talk about the Q46. I liked that the color was really fast, and sometimes it did flips, and it looked kind of funny, and it was kind of like an action movie to me. And it's four-wheel drive, so it's kind of easy to drive. The color looks very cool. I like the design right there, since it looks kind of like lightning bolts. And plus, overall, the color together just looks really cool, and it's really fun. Thanks for watching Henry's Corner. Bye!
Alright, so I hope you enjoyed our new segment with Henry's Corner. Now I want to take you through my final thoughts. To get right to the point, overall, do I like this vehicle? Yeah, I do. To be honest, I really didn't expect to like it a whole lot. I've kind of gotten a little bit worn out on some of the less expensive entry-level type of RCs that I've been using lately, and I've wanted to get back into something a little bit higher end. But I had a chance to review this, and I wanted to give it a try. And to be honest with you, it wound up being a lot more fun than I expected. It's bouncy and springy. It certainly doesn't win any awards for a great suspension. But to be honest, that's kind of what made it fun. To me, this kind of makes it behave like an old Tamiya vehicle. If you've ever seen some of the videos of some of the lunchbox trucks or some of their other friction shock vehicles bouncing around, they don't handle well, but they're a lot of fun. And I really felt like this fit that same bill. I think the truck looks great. Overall, this body is really nice. It's got a nice metallic paint job with some decals that aren't overdone like some of these bodies. And it's a hard body. It's got a nice interior, and it's got the lights, which I think really add quite a bit. The tires are really grippy for a ready-to-run vehicle, and it just wound up being a lot of fun to drive. That's not to say it's not without fault. This hard body and these grippy tires really add up to a vehicle that likes to tip over. If you're not careful, this thing ends up on its roof quite a bit, especially if you want to use it on pavement. This is really almost unusable on pavement. My other criticism for this vehicle really has to do with the battery pack. This is an 18650 2-cell lithium-ion battery pack, and because of where it's located, there's not really room for a different option. If you can find a LiPo that's going to fit in there, it's going to be a really small LiPo, probably around 1200 or 1400 milliamp hours, similar to what this battery has. It doesn't give you a lot of runtime. Using it quite a bit, you get about 10 minutes, which in this day and age, I don't think is a lot of runtime. I think the battery pack has enough power, but you're also not getting the full benefit of that larger 540 can. These batteries don't have that high current discharge capability that LiPos are known for, and so your throttle response is a little bit softer. You still get good top speed, you just don't have that crazy low end power, which, to be honest, I think is the benefit of having the 540 motor. But because this vehicle has plastic gears in it, this type of a battery pack is probably a blessing, because you're not going to go tearing up those gears. There are metal gears available, and with the combination of metal gears and a real honest-to-goodness LiPo pack, I think this vehicle will probably end up being quite a bit more powerful. I may try to come up with an idea for a different battery tray. I think I can sling one right underneath the current battery tray in here, and that way I can fit a larger LiPo. And if I do that, I'll try to upgrade to the metal gears. So you guys may see this vehicle on an upcoming video. I may do some upgrades. I like it enough that I want to keep using it, and if I keep using it, ultimately I'll end up upgrading it. So at the time of this review, this vehicle sells for about 80 bucks. I've got the link below. Go ahead and check it out if you're interested. It's available in red and in blue. And I think for 80 bucks, it's a fun vehicle. And so far, it's been durable enough for me that I wouldn't hesitate to recommend it as a gift to a child either. I've had good luck with it. I've had a couple packs through it. I've hammered on it, my kids have hammered on it, and we've had no breakages. So overall, I think for the money, it's a great vehicle, and I hope you guys give it some consideration. So until next time, guys, thanks for watching.